How do you define wokeness? Because I hear people use the term all the time and it means something different to everybody.
Well, again, I think it's this collection of ideas that are not building on liberalism, but very often undoing it. I mean, 5 years ago, Abraham Lincoln was not a controversial figure among liberals. We liked him. Now they take his name off schools and tear down his statues. Really? Lincoln isn't good enough for you? 5, 10 years ago, bedrock liberalism was we are striving to be a colorblind society where we don't see race. Of course, we see it, but it doesn't matter. That's not what woke is. Woke is something very different. It's identity politics. We see it all the time. It's always the most important thing. I don't think that's liberalism. I mean, I could mention so many issues like that.
Every once in a while, a moment comes along in politics that doesn't feel like politics at all. It feels more like a late-night comedy roast, except the jokes are so sharp, you realize they're also true. That's exactly what happened when Bill Maher took aim at the Democrats. This wasn't polite criticism or some watered-down jab. This was a full-on takedown, a verbal bonfire that left half the audience laughing and the other half wondering if they should start updating their resumes. And what makes it even funnier, or scarier, depending on your perspective, is that Maher wasn't pulling material from some right-wing blogger. He was just pointing out the obvious. The Democrats have a serious problem, and instead of fixing it, they keep throwing glitter on it and hoping voters won't notice. Spoiler alert, voters notice. Let's start with the setup. Democrats are bleeding support from American men, especially working-class men. These are the guys who clock in at factories, fix their own trucks, and drink beer that comes in 12-packs, not tasting flights. And what do Democrats do to reconnect with them? They throw a lavish strategy retreat at the Ritz-Carlton in Half Moon Bay. Yes, the Ritz. Lobster rolls, heirloom tomato carpaccio, seared sea bass. Because obviously nothing says, "We understand your struggles," like gourmet seafood under chandeliers. Imagine telling a guy who works 2 jobs to cover his rent that you're brainstorming his future over a plate of $30 hors d'oeuvres. It's the political equivalent of hosting a farmer appreciation dinner where the only thing on the menu is kale smoothies.
The Dems need to find their Joe Rogan, a liberal Joe Rogan, because that's why Kamala lost. Republicans have a podcast. Okay, maybe. Or you could consider this. Instead of conjuring up a new Joe Rogan, ask yourself why you lost the old one. Because he used to be on your side. He smokes pot on the air. I don't think he's that much of a far-right ideologue.
And it gets better, or worse, depending on how much secondhand embarrassment you can handle. They didn't just meet. They gave the gathering a name, SAM, Speaking with American Men, which honestly sounds like a rejected daytime talk show. But the workshops, that's where the real comedy begins. One was titled, How to Keep Your Liberal Base While Putting Guns on Your Christmas Card. Another, Best Protein Powder for a Clean Bulk. If you're wondering whether these are real or something cooked up by the Onion, sadly they're real. Think about how absurd that is. A voter is stressed about gas prices, wondering if his job will still exist next year, and your pitch is, have you tried pea protein? It's great for your bench press. That's not voter outreach, that's a bad GNC commercial. Of course, no political comedy of errors would be complete without alcohol. So naturally, there was a session on Bud Light etiquette. When to drink it, when to shoot it. And this, of course, comes right after Bud Light's now legendary PR meltdown. That's like giving PR training by using New Coke as your case study. And then came the fishing bit. According to their brilliant strategy meeting, fishing is a bizarre hobby working class men enjoy instead of pickleball. Now let's pause here. If your plan to win back voters involves making fun of their hobbies, you might want to close your notebook and start fresh. That's like saying, vote for me, but also, I think everything you enjoy is stupid. Spoiler, that doesn't work. But the awkwardness wasn't done.
Tell the usual suspects on the far left that the saying is, when you're in a hole, stop digging, not keep digging. Talk about doubling down on what got you fucked in the first place. Even the one concession I've heard a few people on the losing side offer, that liberals should stop saying the Trump voters are stupid, comes with a kind of unspoken parentheses, we know they are stupid, just don't say it.
They even dragged Titanic into it, specifically the nude scene. Because apparently the Democrats' new voter strategy manual is part political guide, part middle school locker room banner. If your plan is to win back voters with boob jokes instead of policy, you're not running a campaign, you're running open mic night at the saddest comedy club in America. When Maher shifted to Joe Rogan, he hit a nerve. For years, Rogan was embraced by the left as the cool, relatable everyman. He was the guy who could sit in a studio, smoke a cigar, and casually chat about everything from aliens to elk meat. He didn't talk like a politician, he talked like your funny uncle who also happens to know a shocking amount about jiu-jitsu. But somewhere along the way, the relationship soured. Rogan didn't change much. He still hunts, lifts, podcasts, and speaks his mind. What changed was the way the left started treating masculinity. Suddenly, being a man in a traditional sense, enjoying sports, lifting weights, talking about fighting, was framed as outdated at best, toxic at worst. And while the Democratic Party was busy holding seminars on pea protein and Bud Light etiquette, Rogan was out here doing 3-hour conversations about the economy, free speech, and yes, sometimes Bigfoot. That's the difference. Rogan feels authentic. You may not agree with everything he says. In fact, plenty of people don't, but there's no script, no branding consultant whispering in his ear. He just says it. And that's why millions of people trust him more than polished politicians. Maher's point here was brutal but true. The left has created a culture where masculinity is treated like a sickness. Say something slightly outside the approved script, and you're excommunicated.
Maher was on his show on Friday Night Real Time on HBO, and there he was mocking the Democrats over their absolute incompetence.
This state has almost 400,000 regulations. I just put in a new roof because the fire, I thought, oh, let's get a roof that's not going to burn up. 2 inspections. Why are you inspecting my roof? It's my roof. If it falls on me, that's my problem. And we're taxed more than any other state. People are leaving these kind of states for places where they're not, they feel the heavy breath of government on them. It's not that hard for Democrats to understand this, but they seem to be incapable of doing anything about it.
Maher, of course, is totally correct about this. And if you follow people's revealed preferences, meaning not what they say they like, but what they actually like, the feet are moving south.
Meanwhile, guys are tuning into Rogan because he isn't telling them to be ashamed of who they are. He's saying, be strong, be curious, be open, but don't apologize for being a man. And this isn't just about Rogan. He's symbolic of a bigger problem. The Democrats used to have cultural figures on their side, musicians, comedians, podcasters, people who made their ideas feel cool and connected. Now, when even Joe Rogan walks away, that's a giant flashing warning sign. It's not just losing a podcaster, it's losing the cultural bridge to millions of voters who crave authenticity more than a policy memo. Then Maher pivoted to Latino voters, and this is where the roast got surgical. For decades, Latino communities were seen as a reliable Democratic base, but that grip is slipping, and fast. One district on the Texas border, 85% Latino, flipped Republican. That's not just a bad night at the polls, that's a political earthquake. So why the flip? Maher didn't sugarcoat it. Voters stopped seeing Democrats as their advocates. They wanted someone to represent them, their families, their neighborhoods, their struggles. Not just migrants crossing the border. When you're worried about crime, job opportunities, and fentanyl overdoses in your own community, and your representative seems more concerned with Twitter arguments about pronouns, the disconnect is deadly. And speaking of pronouns, let's talk about the infamous Latinx fiasco. This is where Democrats decided to reinvent the Spanish language without asking the people who actually speak it. The term Latinx was born in activist and academic circles, then supercharged by Twitter. The problem? Almost no actual Latino people like it. Poll after poll shows they overwhelmingly reject it. Some even find it offensive because it imposes an English-speaking ideology onto a language that's already gendered by design.
How many know what SAM stands for? It's a new phrase. It stands for Speaking with American Men, SAM. This is the new movement by the Democratic Party. They lost the men vote a lot last time, so they had a meeting up at the Ritz-Carlton at Half Moon Bay, south of San Francisco. I'm not making this up, where they served mini lobster rolls and had heirloom tomato carpaccio and seared sea bass in their conclave to decide how to win back the American man.
Imagine if someone tried to rebrand French people as something more inclusive. Everyone in Paris would be like, excusez-moi, what the hell is this? That's basically how Latino voters feel about Latinx. But Democrats ran with it anyway, convinced it was the branding breakthrough of the decade. They treated it like Yes We Can 2.0, when in reality, it landed with the same energy as a reboot of Speedy Gonzales. Even the country's oldest Latino civil rights group publicly denounced it, basically saying, no one asked for this. And yet, you still have figures like AOC defending it. Her argument? Gender is fluid, language is fluid. Okay, sure, language evolved. That's why nobody says groovy anymore. But there's a difference between natural evolution and politicians forcing linguistic surgery on an entire community. Here's the part Democrats don't get. Voters are fluid too. And lately, they're flowing right out of the party. When you talk past people instead of to them, when you treat their culture like a branding experiment, you're not winning hearts, you're alienating them. Latino voters don't need a new label. They need leaders who care about their daily realities, wages, safety, schools, and opportunity. Maher's roast made it clear, you can't play identity politics while ignoring actual identities. If you're branding more than you're governing, people will notice. And when they feel like you're more interested in impressing Twitter activists than helping their families, they'll walk. That's not just a theory, that's what's already happening. By the end of this monologue, Maher's point was painfully clear. Democrats are out of touch. While voters are worried about inflation, crime, and whether their kids will have a future, the party is busy hosting conferences about Bud Light etiquette and Carpaccio. It's like trying to fix a leaking roof by repainting the walls. It looks good for a minute, then the whole thing collapses. Maher wasn't just being funny, he was holding up a mirror, and the reflection wasn't flattering. If the Democrats don't stop talking at people and start talking with them, they're going to keep losing ground, and no amount of mini lobster rolls will save them. So here's the real question. Are Democrats truly this clueless about why voters are leaving them? Or do they just not care? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm sure plenty of you have stories about being talked down to or ignored by politicians who claim to represent you. At the rate politicians are going, we're going to have plenty more comedy disguised as politics to laugh and maybe cry about. If you guys liked today's video, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.